I'm David Garcia. I've been a weightlifter for 16 years and I compete in the 96 kilogram weight class for Team Juggernaut. So a typical day, I usually am coming into the gym. It kind of depends on the day, but I'm usually coming into the gym in the morning. Sometimes it can be as early as 5 a.m. class here. I teach some of the CrossFit classes here. So those can be pretty early. It can range all over the day, from really early morning to like mid-afternoon, later afternoon. And then late afternoon, about 3:30 or 4 is when I come in and get ready to start training. And that's also when my barbell team starts coming in. I usually like to train while I coach them. It kind of keeps me mentally engaged the whole time, and I really enjoy being able to train with other people. Otherwise, it gets pretty lonely. So I spent 2 years in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center. You'd have to break up my time there into two kind of phases, because the first year I was there, I spent almost all of it rehabbing. I had to have rotator cuff surgery on my shoulder pretty soon, probably 3 months into my stay there. So most of that first year there in 2014, I spent doing a lot of leg and back strengthening work, just, both to be ready for when I came back and also to not die of boredom out there, because it can be pretty stagnant sometimes if you don't give yourself things to do. Once I was able to start competing again, I entered the Arnold Weightlifting Championship in 2015. So that's a little ways into the second year I was there, and had the best performance I've had to date in competition. I snatched 171 kilograms and clean and jerked 205. That was probably the high point of my stay there, coming off the injury and really being able to throw out a great performance like that. It temporarily put me on the team for the Pan Ams that year, but unfortunately they weren't taking a full team because it was the Pan American Games that year, so it was only a partial team. So I ended up being bumped off the top 4, I think is what they were taking that year. And after that, the training volume and intensity that we constantly were under out there started to wear on my body a lot more. And that, in conjunction with kind of being in a place where I was always chasing either a number or a team, or it didn't put me in a good place to be able to put good performances out. So I had a lot of competitions where I failed the total that year. I also got involved with Team Juggernaut that year on a visit Chad had out to the training center. So that was a great experience, and I'm glad to have become a part of this. But overall, it started good at the training center, but eventually the trying to strictly follow the high intensity and volume we were constantly on was too much physically and mentally for me. After I left the Olympic Training Center, I did my own prep alongside my friend Ian Wilson for about 6 months leading up to the Olympic trials that year. But after that was over, I had been injured and banged up, I didn't really have that much of a direction to go with weightlifting. And I was, fortunately, I had, already met Chad and already gotten involved with the Juggernaut team. And so in the middle of that year, with the Olympic Training Center program for weightlifting shutting down, Chad had all of the athletes that he'd been involved with out there. He had them all come out to a training camp in the middle of 2016 down in Southern California. We all trained there for a couple weeks, and it was a lot of fun, and I got to be supervised by Max Ada. That was really, like, I'd known Max for quite a long time because he was in the Bay Area for a while with California Strength, and then with his own gym in Oakland. And so I knew him. I'd always say hi at the local competitions, and I knew that he knew a lot about being strong and getting people strong, but I'd never really experienced him as a weightlifting coach with me being the athlete. So that was really good. We really had a good rapport during that camp. He had a lot of positive things to say and a lot of good adjustments for me to make with both how I did the lifts technically and how I approached training in general. So I knew that was going to be a good direction for me to go after everything at the training center, and after just injuries kind of kept me out of action trying to go to the trials in 2016. Unfortunately, really soon after I started training under Max's guidance, I suffered a knee injury in training, and at the time I had no idea what it was. I'd never had any problems with my knees before outside of the infrequent like quad or patellar tendonitis. But my right knee swelled up so much I couldn't bend it past 90 degrees, and it took a while to get a real good diagnosis on it because it just isn't a very common injury. But what had happened was that the articular cartilage that kind of lets your bones glide against each other inside of a joint, the articular cartilage on my femur had a hole taken out of it, which it's kind of hard to say when exactly it happened or what exactly did it. It seems like it was a combination of wear and tear, with one particular lift being the straw that broke the camel's back. So there was no cartilage protecting that surface of my femur anymore, and that was causing a ton of inflammation in the joint. And unfortunately, cartilage isn't really a tissue that heals itself. So I actually had to consult a surgeon who performs a pretty new procedure. It's called ACI. And basically what that does is in 2 steps, the surgeon harvests a piece of cartilage from a part of the knee where you don't need it. And in a laboratory that he sends that to, they will grow the chondrocytes, the cells that make cartilage, out of that. And then in a second step, the surgeon will implant them back in where you're missing the cartilage. And on top of that, he also precisely broke my tibia and realigned my knee joint so that the pressure was much more evenly distributed through my knee. So the risk of of an injury like that happening again is much, much less, especially if, I don't do activities that put unbalanced amounts of stress on my legs. So once we knew what to do, once I had consulted this surgeon, we just had to get the procedure cleared through my insurance, which unfortunately was a nightmare. And it took almost an entire year before I was able to get the procedure done, which at first that was really hard for me, to not be able to do the sport at all for an entire year when the previous 13, I had been like more or less constantly doing it in some capacity. Had some mental health struggles, had some treatment for major depressive disorder at one point, but it helped to be able to get back into coaching the sport. In mid-2017, I was able to come down here to Vista, California, and got involved here at CrossFit Trifecta, and that just starting to get involved helped a lot again. But by the end of 2017, I finally had that procedure, and fortunately, I had a great surgeon who really knew what he was doing, so everything took as well as it possibly could have. And fortunately, I also had a physical therapist who really knew what he was doing. I used Quinn Hennock to guide my rehab through this, and that was about a 14-month process. I was a little bit surprised at myself, just that my body was able to come back from such a catastrophic injury. My knee, outside of the ligaments, my knee basically had to be reconstructed. And it's come through no worse for the wear. So that was quite an ordeal at the time, but I'm glad it's in the rearview mirror. In the lead up to the knee injury, I had been training for 2 years at the Olympic Training Center, and then another 6 months after that, kind of training on my own. And the overall intensity and volume of that was so heavy all the time, and so many reps all the time of just maximum or just under that weights. And it didn't really, being able to do that all the time didn't really show results on the day of a competition. And in the end, all it really did was cause a lot of pain. It let me know that I was able to, what I was really capable of, how strong I really could be. But in the end, it wasn't the best method of training for me being able to put my best results on the competition platform when the day came. So when I came out of the injury and came out of rehab with Quinn, I went straight to max. That's the first person I thought, I even just having his tutelage for 2-3 weeks, less than a month in 2016, I knew like that was the direction I wanted to go, because he had a great deal of experience with a lot of different systems of training, including some of the ones that I had experienced when I was in Colorado and after that. And so he knew, their relative effectiveness, and he knew how to put something together that really made use of my strengths and would bring out, my best performances. I felt like I would be working with a colleague. And so after the injury, I really understood that I had to take a little more initiative in, making sure I maintained my health. Like, I wouldn't just throw myself at the program no matter what I felt like, or no matter what things were, how things were going, how many misses I was having, what the lifts were looking or feeling like. You have to take all those things into account as an athlete and communicate those things. And that wasn't really something that I was capable of doing as much before the injury and before I started training with Max. So that's the biggest part of training that's really changed for me. It's being able to make those adjustments as needed during the program to, you know, not derail the whole thing just because I felt like going, you know, I had to take my ego out of the equation a little bit. I'm immensely grateful to everybody who's helped me, you know, through everything I've been through in weightlifting and helped me continue to succeed. Quinn Hennock, for, you know, he was my physical therapist for a year and 2 months, just very patient and very intelligent with how he was able to adapt to what my body was doing. So huge thanks to Quinn. Dr. Ken Akizuki, he was my surgeon who really did, if he wasn't able to do what he does, I probably wouldn't be able to lift anymore. Either that or I would have to get my knee replaced really young, which that's obviously not a great thing to have to do. But he's, you know, just incredibly grateful. Max and Chad, both of them have. I'm so, you know, it's very hard to put into words how much it means to me that they wanted, just as soon as I reached out to them after I was finishing up rehab with Quinn, just like, oh yeah, like, we're ready to go again. We're gonna get you back into fighting shape. It was really meant a lot to me. And obviously my wife, my parents, my other doctor, Dr. Misra, he referred me to my surgeon, and I don't think I would have been able to get this thing done without him. So this is all, it's been a pretty long and trying experience, and it's been amazing to have people on my side to help me through it.